The story begins with Ishan, an 8-year-old boy who has learning difficulties due to dyslexia. Ishan is still unable to read, write, or count despite being in elementary school. Ishan is more interested in his surroundings than in his classroom lessons. He is also known as the school's stupidest student. Ishan has an older brother named Yohane, who is the polar opposite of Ishan and excels in school. Yohane, on the other hand, is very affectionate and caring for his younger brother. Ishan gets into a fight with his neighbor, Ranjit, one day. Ranjit was furious because Ishan had thrown the ball in the wrong direction. The boy then shoved Ishan's tiny body and mocked him as an idiot. During the fight, Ishan suffers a head wound, and Ranjit is bitten by Ishan, causing his clothes to tear. Their parents are aware of the fight, and Ranjit and his mother go to Ishan's house to hold Ishan's parents responsible for his son's injuries. Despite the fact that Ranjit's posture is larger and stronger than Ishan's, and Ishan's injuries are much more severe. Nonetheless, Ishan's father, Mr.HashOver, chastised his youngest son for fighting and did not hesitate to beat him because he was a troublemaker. If Ishan continues to cause trouble, Mr.HashOver threatens to send him to boarding school. Meanwhile, at school, Ishan is frequently chastised by his teachers for failing to pay attention to the lesson. Ishan was asked to read a sentence by his teacher one day, but he struggled and claimed that the letters danced, so he couldn't. His teacher became concerned that the child was not serious about his studies and scolded him severely. Ishan becomes the class clown and is regarded as a moron. Ishan decided to skip class because he couldn't stand being scolded by his teacher and bullied by his classmates. He goes wherever he wants and does whatever he wants without being bothered or mocked. Ishan saw and learned a lot thanks to his imagination and curiosity. Although he struggled with reading, writing, and arithmetic, he discovered a talent for the arts and spends much of his free time drawing and painting. Ishan then told his brother that he skipped school this afternoon and asked him to assist him in creating a fake permit so he could skip school again. Ishan and his classmates will take a math test the following day. Ishan attempts a math test with his imagination because he is not good at arithmetic. However, because he requires a significant amount of time to complete one question, he can only answer one question until the end of the exam. Ishan, without a doubt, performed poorly on the exam. Ishan's father inadvertently discovers a fake license, which he uses to get out of school. He went on a rant, chastising Ishan for being caught truant. It did not end there. The school then called Ishan and his parents, explaining that Ishan couldn't follow all of the lessons at school and that the teachers thought he was a stupid student. The principal then advises Mr.HashOver to transfer Ishan to another school because Ishan has missed class once and will be expelled if he has to stay in class twice more. Ishan's father reluctantly sent him to a boarding school. Ishan tries to persuade his father not to send him to a boarding school by promising to study more diligently. However, his father's decision to send Ishan to a boarding school was unanimous because Mr.HashOver hoped that his children would excel academically. Maya, Ishan's mother, on the other hand, appears sad and frustrated due to her inability to educate Ishan. It actually separates her from her youngest son, who must live in a dormitory and be separated from his family. Maya and Yohane were forced to part ways with Ishan, who was now forced to live and attend a boarding school with a heavy heart. Ishan couldn't believe his father had the courage to send him to a boarding school. Ishan can't stop crying because he misses his family and always appears depressed. Ishan quickly succumbs to fear, anxiety, and depression as a result of feeling alone there, which is exacerbated by the attitude of the teachers, who are no better than his old school and his friends, who frequently bullied him. His only friend is Rajan, a physically disabled boy who is one of the top students and lives at the school with his family because his father is on the school board. Ishan considers suicide one day, but Rajan stops him. Ishan increasingly feels imprisoned at school because he can no longer feel his mother's and brother's caress of love and outpouring of attention. Even weekly visits from his parents did not alleviate Ishan's pain because he was frequently bullied and ridiculed as an idiot at school. One day, a man named Ram Shankar Nikum arrives at Ishan's school to replace Mr. Holkar as an art teacher. Mr. Nikum quickly became known to the students due to his cheerful and pleasant demeanor. Not so with Ishan, who is frequently pensive and alone in class. Mr. Nikum's teaching style is very different from Mr. Holkar's, and he quickly notices Ishan's dissatisfaction the day after he fails to draw anything during class. Ishan's slump is exacerbated when his mother informs him that they will be unable to visit him next week because Yohane will be attending a tennis match, so his family will be there to support him. Mr. Nikum learns from Rajan that Ishan is a new student who struggles to retain information. He then took the initiative to look through Ishan's textbooks and discovered that he was dyslexic. As a result, the boy struggled to listen to lessons at school using the methods taught in schools in general. Ishan is not an illiterate student. The child only requires special attention and guidance because of his dyslexia. Mr. Nikum is aware of this because he was a teacher at the Tulip School for young children with developmental disabilities, and he understands how difficult it is for Ishan to follow the learning methods used in public schools. Mr. Nikumb is desperate to visit Ishan's parents' house in Mumbai and inquire directly about Ishan's condition from his family in order to help Ishan learn and rise from his slump. He is taken aback when he discovers Ishan's hidden interest in art. However, his parents frequently overlook Ishan's imagination, creativity, and talent in art and painting, particularly his father, who believes that being an artist is a bad thing. Mr. Nikumb, flustered, demonstrates to Ishan's parents and Johan how Ishan has extreme difficulty understanding letters and words due to dyslexia, and how his deficiencies in sports skills stem from his poor motor ability. Ishan's father, however, labels it as mental retardation and dismisses it as laziness. Mr. Nikumb tries to persuade Ishan's father that his son is not a moron and that he is gifted in the arts. However, Nandakishore frequently compares Ishan to Johan, who excels in academics and sports, and believes that Ishan will never be a great person if he is only talented in the arts. Mr. Nikumb was immediately irritated that Ishan's father only saw the outside world as a competitive arena and urged his children to excel as he hoped, without ever considering what was best for their children or exploring their potential. Maya reflected on Mr. Nikumb's words after he had left, crying and contemplating fate. The following day at school, Mr. Nikumb brings up the topic of dyslexia in Ishan's class, citing a list of world-famous people who had dyslexia as children. Mr. Nikumb explains that being dyslexic does not preclude you from excelling. After that, he tells Ishan that he, too, had dyslexia as a child, so he can understand Ishan's difficulties and can help him study. Mr. Nikumb asked the students to make crafts based on their own imaginations during that day's lesson. Ishan poured all of his imagination into his craft and received praise from Mr. Nikumb and his classmates because he was free to create anything. Mr. Nikumb then approaches the principal and attempts to persuade him that Ishan is a student of above-average intelligence. The child simply requires proper attention and guidance in order to explore his or her potential and talent. Mr. Nikumb tries to persuade the principal that he can be Ishan's tutor, helping him listen to school lessons. Knowing Ishan's great talent in painting, the principal finally agreed to let Mr. Nikumb help Ishan overcome his academic difficulties. Mr. Nikumb uses remedial techniques developed by dyslexia specialists to gradually improve Ishan's reading and writing. With Mr. Nikumb's teaching methods, Ishan gradually began to understand the lessons at school. He guides Ishan with care, patience, and humor in order for him to understand him more quickly. Ishan can now read, write, and perform basic arithmetic. Nandakishore came to the school one day and told Mr. Nikumb that he and his wife have read about dyslexia and are beginning to understand his son's condition. Mr. Nikumb, on the other hand, believes that Ishan requires more than just an understanding of his dyslexic condition. Mr. Nikumb believes that Ishan requires love and attention from those closest to him, particularly his parents. Ishan requires someone who will love and accept him for who he is, regardless of his condition. Hearing Mr. Nikumb's words, Ishan's father realized that he had never done this to Ishan because he had always thought of Ishan as a stupid and lazy child, so he frequently scolded and beat him. Nandakishore then notices Ishan reading the leaflet from the blackboard. He couldn't face his son with teary eyes, so he left school without seeing him. Ishan's school organizes an arts and crafts contest for the school staff and all students at the end of the school year, which is judged by great artist Lalita Lajmi. Mr. Nikumb searches the school for Ishan's whereabouts near the start of the race, but he is nowhere to be found. It turned out that Ishan had prepared and visited a lake near the school early in the morning to find inspiration for the painting he would create for this competition. A few minutes after the competition begins, Ishan returns to school. Mr. Nikumb immediately directs Ishan to his position and requests that the boy join the race immediately. Ishan created a painting that astonished many people, including Mr. Nikumb, who is already aware of the boy's talent in painting and continues to explore the boy's potential and talents. Ishan was also moved when he discovered that Mr. Nikumb had created an excellent portrait of himself. Ishan finally won first place in the painting competition thanks to his hard work and sincerity. Ishan's painting was chosen as the best work and will be used as the cover of the school yearbook. While Mr. Nikumb, who painted Ishan's portrait, was named runner-up. Everyone applauds Ishan's victory. In addition, the principal announced that Mr. Nikumb will be a permanent art teacher at the school. When Ishan's parents met with the principal on the last day of school before the long holiday, they were surprised to learn that Ishan's painting had been chosen for the cover of the yearbook, and the principal had praised Ishan as a talented student. He considered himself extremely fortunate that a gifted child like Ishan attended school. When the teachers spoke about Ishan's progress in several subjects, especially art, Ishan's parents were also speechless. Nandakishore and Maya are grateful to Mr. Nikumb for guiding Ishan and always supporting Ishan, and for making him realize how important it is to pay attention to Ishan according to his condition and abilities, which are very different from his brothers. Before leaving, Ishan runs up to Mr. Nikumb, who embraces him tightly.